My name is Kaylee. I'm a registered dietitian at Franciscan St. James. I'm excited to be here with you guys today, and I hope you really take away a lot of what we're going to talk about. And I want it to be pretty casual, so if you have any questions throughout, feel free to jump in, ask them. I want to talk about things that you guys need to learn and talk about. So any questions throughout, please feel free to bring them up. Okay, so this is just kind of our agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about what's included in a balanced diet, healthy snacks, sugars, label readings, a whole bunch of different things. So we're going to first start with what's included in a balanced diet. So the 2016 dietary guidelines recently came out, and what that does is it gives the general population just some recommendations for what's included in a healthy diet. So these are kind of the main points. So the first one is going to be a variety of vegetables, which I'm sure you guys all know vegetables are good for us. Why they're good, they don't have a lot of calories, and you're going to get a lot of good nutrients out of them. And one of the focuses for the dietary guidelines is making sure that you're getting a good variety. So all the different colors of vegetables, like the reds, the purples, the yellows, those are all going to give you different nutrients. So it's really good to get a good variety. The next is going to be whole fruits. So I know fruit juice is a really popular thing, but unfortunately it's not always the best option. So with the juice, you're going to get mostly just sugar from the fruit, whereas if you were to eat a whole fruit, like apple versus an apple juice, the apple is going to give you fiber, which helps keep you full, helps kind of sustain you until your next meal, which is a really good thing. The next is going to be grains. So the recommendation is to make at least half of your grains whole grains. And so what that means is during the processing, things like white breads or white rices, white pastas, a lot of the nutrients are stripped out of that. And so when you're eating those things, you're not eating much else besides carbohydrates. Whereas if you're eating things like whole wheat bread, brown rice, whole wheat pasta, you're going to get more nutrients because you're going to get more fiber from eating the whole grain part. Nothing is stripped away from it. And you're going to get some more B vitamins, which again is a good thing. More vitamins, more minerals. The next is going to be fat-free or low-fat dairy. So things like low-fat milk, low-fat yogurt. For you guys that are still growing, it's important that you get enough calcium, enough vitamin D, and that's going to be found primarily in dairy products. So those are a really good thing to also be incorporating into your diet. The second to last is going to be different sources of protein. So protein, it's really important that you're getting a little bit at each of your meals. The leaner sources of protein are going to be things like chicken, fish, poultry. Those are typically leaner, whereas the red meats aren't necessarily bad, but they do tend to have a little bit more fat in them. And so that's why those are usually recommended to kind of eat less of. They do have good nutrients, so that's why it's good to get a variety. Again, you want to mix things up and not eat too much of one thing. Along with the protein is going to be nuts, so like almonds, cashews, pistachios. Those are all really good things to incorporate. Not only do they have protein, they're also going to have healthy fats. And so that's called monounsaturated fat, and that's a good thing that you want to be having in your diet. And along with that is olive oil. So olive oil also is going to have that healthy fat. And so the fats do have more calories per gram, just naturally, but kind of like Mark was mentioning earlier, you're going to get a lot of nutrients and a lot of benefit out of those calories. So all of them are worth it. Okay? So kind of moving forward, we're going to talk a little bit about when should I have a snack, what's a good snack. I know when people are trying, to lose weight, to eat healthier, they think that they kind of need to starve themselves and not eat more throughout the day. But snacking is a really good thing, especially between like lunch and dinner. That's usually a pretty long period of time. And normally when you get to dinner, you're probably pretty hungry. And so you might overeat. You might eat more than if you would have had a snack. You probably would have kind of been able to portion yourself out a little bit better. So the important thing to remember is snacks are okay to have, but you want to make sure that, one, you're actually hungry, and two, that it's doing your body good and that you're making good choices. So personally, I know I'm a stress eater. When I get stressed out, all I want to do is eat. I know there's a lot of those. So there's a lot of different emotions that can cause us to eat, like stress, boredom, frustration. So it's really important to kind of keep in mind before you're eating, like a snack or something, kind of ask yourself, am I hungry or am I just bored? Should I go for a walk? Should I do something else? Because that happens to everyone. So it's really important to kind of keep in your mind, making sure that you're actually hungry before you go ahead and eat. So up here we have different types of snacks. Excuse me. So the first is going to be 1 to 2 tablespoons of a nut butter, almond butter, peanut butter, with either like a banana, an apple. Celery is always a good thing with peanut butter. Raw vegetables with hummus. We have a handful of nuts, so like the nuts that we mentioned earlier, the almonds, the pistachios. with like a small piece of fruit. That's also a good snack. And then a homemade fruit parfait. So I usually recommend for people to have the plain yogurt. I know there's a bunch of those fruited yogurts out there, which aren't terrible, but they do tend to have a lot more added sugar in them, whereas the very plain yogurt, the taste, it's gonna be an acquired taste for sure. But you can add your own fruit to it, and with that you'll get more fiber from the actual fruit, whereas you're not just getting the flavoring from the fruited yogurt. And you can also add some nuts to that too, and that's a good well-rounded snack. So if you'll kind of notice, with all of these things, we have a healthy fat, so that's like the nuts, that's going to be the nut butter. You have that paired with like a little bit of carbohydrates from your fruit, and then usually a little bit of protein. And all three of those things are good to get in a snack. That means it's going to help carry you over until your next meal, which is kind of what we said was the point of a snack, right? To kind of last you until your next meal. So kind of getting a good combination of those things can be really helpful. So I know snacks that are kind of typical among teenagers, we've all been there, are like chips and pops and cookies. Everyone likes those things. I'm one of them. But we're gonna kind of get into maybe why those aren't the best choices. Wrong button. Okay, so we're gonna talk a little bit about calorie-dense foods versus nutrient-dense foods. And based off this chart, I'm kind of hoping you guys assumed that the apple was the nutrient-dense food. If not, that's okay. So what that means, nutrient-dense foods are gonna have usually less calories, and they're gonna get a lot more benefit. Kind of how we talked about though, like the fats, the healthy fats, those are gonna have a little bit more calories, but still worth all that benefit. Compared to things that are calorie dense, those are foods that have a lot of calories that aren't gonna give you a lot of nutrients. So they're kind of empty calories, okay? So we kind of have a couple things up here to compare. So the first, we're gonna compare the apple and the Milky Way. So an apple is gonna have 72 calories, compared to the Milky Way at 274 calories. The apple won't have any protein or fat. The Milky Way will have a little. And then, let's see, there's a little bit of glare. The carbohydrates is something to kind of look at. So the Milky Way has almost double that of the apple, and same with the sugar. So that's a lot more just in that small Milky Way compared to that apple. Okay. Potassium, you're gonna get a lot more vitamins, that potassium and that mineral from the apple. And then a little bit of vitamin K, okay? And then comparing that to the Doritos, the calories in the Doritos aren't terrible. They're really not that high for a bag of Doritos. But kind of looking at the other nutrients, you're really not gonna get a whole lot else out of that. A little bit of vitamin K, but that still doesn't mean it's an okay thing, a good thing, okay? So this is just to kind of let you guys know, it's important to kind of look at what's in your food and the benefit that you're gonna get out of the things that you're eating, okay? Okay, so kind of moving towards that. Does anybody know what's their recommendation for added sugar per day? Anyone have a guess?
35?
0 ideally, but 30. Okay, so the recommendation is for men, it's going to be about 9 teaspoons of added sugar, and for women, about 6 teaspoons. So to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like, we're going to look at this next picture. So these are a bunch of snack foods. And so one of those sugar cubes is equal to 1 teaspoon. And if you remember our recommendation, 9 teaspoons for men and 6 for women. And so a lot of these things go well beyond that recommendation, just from one serving. Okay, so like the Mountain Dew, for example, there's a little bit of a glare, but so that's a lot more than the 6 teaspoons or the 9 teaspoons per day. And if you have more than 1 pop a day, that's gonna add up to even more than that. Same with like all the candy bars up there, the ice cream. No, I'm not saying you can't ever have these things again, but I just want you guys to kind of be aware of how much sugar is in these kinds of things, okay? And then that pop from McDonald's. And so I know there's a big hype to kind of, when you're getting the super big sizes, you're gonna get a better deal, better bang for your buck, so to say. But health-wise, those aren't always the best choices, okay? So let's see. The next we're gonna move on to sodium. So does anyone know how much sodium's in a teaspoon of salt? Sodium, yep. I'm sorry? Yes. So they're similar, but not the same. Okay, any guesses? Sure. 5? Okay, so not necessarily, but we're gonna talk, so close. 2,300 milligrams is how much sodium's in a teaspoon of salt. So kind of to put that into perspective, so we have the recommendation from the American Heart Association is 1,500 milligrams per day for optimal health. That's kind of a hard number to get down to because almost everything has sodium in it. So they give you an upper level of about 2,300 milligrams, which is equivalent to that teaspoon. And so, you know, if you're adding a little bit of salt to your food now and then, you're probably never going to add a whole teaspoon because that is a lot. But, you know, throughout the day, it's going to add up to probably a pretty significant amount of salt. Okay, so it's good to kind of just keep that in mind. And what's even a little bit scarier is on average how much we're having. So on average, Americans consume around 3,400 milligrams, which is about 1,000 milligrams more than we need. Okay. And you know, it's hard because salt is really kind of hidden in everything. Almost everything is going to have a little bit of sodium in it. Even fruits and vegetables will have a little bit, not a lot, but still some. Most of your meats are going to have a little bit too. I'm looking up here, the top 6 sources. So where Americans get the most sodium is breads and rolls, which I know is kind of surprising. You wouldn't think of bread as a high sodium food, and it's not high, but we're eating kind of a lot of it, and so it adds up throughout the day. Cold cuts and cured meats, so things like deli meats, hot dogs, bratwursts, all those things are going to be pretty high in sodium. Pizza, you know, the sauce is going to have sodium, the cheese is going to have sodium, and the crust will have it. So all those 3 things together is going to add up to a high sodium food. Soups are typically pretty high in sodium too, especially the canned soups. Sandwiches, and then poultry. So it's just kind of, you know, good to be aware of the things that are maybe a little bit higher in sodium. And we're going to look at a label pretty soon to kind of help you guys determine like what is high, what's considered a good number. Okay, so that's what we're going to get to next, the food labels. So I'm not sure if any of you guys kind of look at food labels, pay attention to them. Are there certain things that you look for? Yeah. Fat. I'm sorry?
To see if there's any chemicals in it.
Okay, like the ingredient list? Okay, good. Sugar, good. Yep, calories, okay. Okay, good. Those are all good things. It's good that you guys are looking at them because a lot of people just ignore them. But they're there to kind of help us make good decisions, so always a good thing to look at. Okay, so we have an example up here. And so if you've ever noticed things like fruits and vegetables, things that only have one ingredient, aren't going to have a label. They aren't required to because there's only one ingredient, you know what it is. But things that have more than one, the ingredients are going to be listed in order by descending weight. So meaning, say you're looking at a cereal, if the very first ingredient says sugar, that means most of that cereal is made out of sugar. That's probably not a cereal that you want to choose, okay? So it's always good to look at the ingredients too, like you said, looking for what's in it, how much is in it, the order of the ingredients, okay? And then the next thing you want to look up at is the serving size. So this one says, I think, 1 cup, but every food item is going to be a little bit different, okay? Some might say half a cup, some might say a tablespoon, some might say like 16 chips, whatever it might be. So you always want to look at that to see, and that's going to be equivalent to, so 1 cup, all those nutrients are going to be just in 1 cup, but if you eat more than that, say you eat 2 cups, you're going to have to double all those numbers. So per 1 serving, this might not look like a bad thing, but if you have 2 or 3 servings, all those numbers are going to double or triple, okay? So the next thing underneath that, you want to look at the serving size. So like we kind of just talked about, if there's more than 1 serving per container, this one says 2, all those numbers are going to change if you're eating the whole thing. And some things can be kind of deceiving, like I know some bags of chips might look like 1 serving, you know, not the small ones, those are usually about 1 serving, but the ones that could maybe be 1 serving but are probably 2, it's good to kind of look at the back to make sure, you know, it comes in a package, so you might assume that it's a serving, but it might not be, okay? So it's always good to start up there. The next thing, the fat, I know someone mentioned saturated fat, so that's a good thing to look at. And trans fat's another one. So trans fat's something that we don't want to have any of in our diet. Where saturated fat, it's okay to have a little bit. Trans fat, we don't want to have any. Okay, so if you're ever looking at a food label like this and you see that, that's probably not something that you're going to want to choose. Okay. And then we talked about those healthier fats. So that monounsaturated fat and that polyunsaturated fat, those are good things that you want to see. So things like your almond butter, your almonds or pistachios, all those nuts are going to have those healthy fats in there. And that's a good thing that you want to see on your label. Okay. So sodium's the next one that we kind of talked about. So back to our recommendation of about 2,000 milligrams per day, a number to stick to is about 500 milligrams per meal, okay? So that way, if you're having 3 meals a day, you'll get to about 1,500. That gives you a little bit of room for snacks or if you go over a little bit. I know it's hard because not all your food's always going to have a label on it. You guys might not always know what's in your food. So it's good to know which foods are actually higher in sodium, so those are things that you can kind of monitor. Okay, so things that we talked about before, the deli meats, the soups, the canned goods, those things are going to be higher in sodium. So if you're having that at a meal, maybe kind of pay attention to what else is included in that meal. So especially eating out like at restaurants. Okay, restaurants tend to add a lot of extra salt to their food to make it taste good. And not only that, the portions tend to be pretty big. Okay, so you're probably getting almost a day's worth of salt just in one meal. So if you can, looking at the nutrition facts before you're going out to eat can be something that's helpful. Kind of looking at things, staying away from things that are, say, like smothered or fried. Those things are going to tend to have a little bit more salt in them. Okay, so just kind of trying to make good decisions. I know it's hard to always make good decisions, but being aware of the food that you're eating and being able to make a good decision is helpful. Okay, and then carbohydrates. So let's see. Okay, so first, under the carbohydrates, it'll be broken down by fiber and then sugar. And so, unfortunately, you can't tell on a label which sugar is added and which sugar is natural. But things like fruit and things like yogurt or milk, those things are going to naturally have sugar in them. Whereas things like the things we kind of talked about before, like cookies or cakes, those are all going to be an added sugar. Okay, so those are the ones that you maybe want to limit a little bit more of. Okay, and then protein's the last thing. So typically people probably are getting enough protein. That's not so much a concern usually. But it's good to get a protein source at each meal. So like the meats that we talked about, eggs are a really good source of protein. Okay, things like that. Okay, so I'm in no way condoning going out to eat to fast food restaurants, but I know that, it happens. Your friends are going out to eat, you want to go out to eat. It definitely happens to all of us. So it's good that, if you guys can look at the nutrition facts and kind of be able to make a good decision, okay? So we're going to compare a couple of things. So the first is going to be the Big Mac versus the McChicken. So calorie-wise, the Big Mac's going to be higher in calories, okay, and also higher in fat because it probably might have some cheese on it, might have some mayonnaise on it. All that's going to contribute to the fat, okay? Let's see, sodium's going to be a little bit higher in the Big Mac, probably for the same reasons. The condiments are going to have a little bit of sodium, same with the cheese. And then the carbohydrates will be about the same because the buns are probably about almost equivalent. That's where the carbohydrates is going to come in, okay? And then protein's not too much of a difference. So based on that, is there one that you guys would choose over the other? Okay, yeah, that's probably, again, not a...
Fried chicken or regular chicken?
The McChicken, I think, is grilled, but I'm not positive on that. Yeah. But that's not to say that the quality of the meat isn't going to be kind of harmful, okay? So just looking at the quality of foods, too. So the next we're going to compare is the Junior Bacon Cheeseburger and the Dave's Triple. And I really hope after this talk no one ever eats the Dave's Triple. Looking at the calories, that's about almost half your day's worth of calories, if not more, okay? The fat's going to be pretty significant too. Same with the sodium. So if you remember back to what our sodium recommendation per day was, that was 2,000 milligrams. So that's pretty much it. You're pretty much cut off after this, okay? Again, the carbs won't be too much different. The buns are probably about the same on both of those things. Let's see, and then the protein. So 70 grams of protein in the Dave's Triple. Really, your body can't do much with 70 grams. That's a lot for your body to handle all at once. So it's really not doing you any good to get that extra protein, okay? So based on these, again, neither are a great decision, but based on the calories, the fat, the sodium, the bacon cheeseburger is probably a better option, compared to that 1,000 calories in that Dave's Triple, okay? So, just being able to do this, look at a label, kind of differentiate between what's good, what's bad, what should I look for. Okay, so that's what I kind of want you guys to get out of this. Okay, so next we're going to talk a little bit about portions. So if you look at the My Plate, so that's kind of the new standard for what a plate should look like at each meal. And so it has, some vegetables, some grains, a little bit of protein, dairy. So that's just making sure that you're getting a good variety of foods and you're not just having maybe a meal full of carbohydrates. You're getting your protein, you're getting other things in that meal too. So, to kind of put it into a real food example, you have that picture on the right. So the salmon's going to be your source of protein, okay? Like we said, the fish, the chicken, whatever it might be, that's your protein source. The brown rice will be your grain. And also in that category is going to be included potatoes, peas, and corn. Those are all starchy vegetables. So that's why they go into the grain category rather than the vegetable category, okay? So then half your plate should be vegetables. I know that picture has vegetables and fruit, but half your plate should be the vegetables, okay? And what they don't have on here too is the healthy fat. So cooking with like an olive oil, or I know you guys probably all don't cook, but you know, you can also have like a little bit of like peanut butter or something. Those are all those healthy fats. A handful of nuts, sprinkle some nuts on your salad or something, okay? So just kind of, like I said, making sure you're getting a good variety and you're not just having one group, food group at each meal. You're getting a good variety, okay? Alrighty, so this is kind of just real life examples of what serving sizes look like. So for meat, typically the serving size they say is about the size of the palm of your hand. A deck of cards, that's going to be about 3 to 4 ounces. So that's usually a pretty appropriate serving size. So you ever notice when you go out to eat, those servings are probably a little bit bigger than that. You know, if anyone got a piece of meat that big, they might not really be appreciative of that. So things like butter, a stamp, like the size of a postage stamp is a good serving for butters or oils, things like that, those fats, okay? Brown rice, about a baseball, those are usually about a half a cup or so is a pretty good serving size. So you don't always have to measure your food. You can kind of eyeball it and say, okay, maybe this is a little bit too much. Maybe this is not enough. Vegetables are always a good thing to get more of. So if you ever are in doubt, always fill up your plate with those vegetables, okay? So yeah, these are good things to keep in mind for, you know, when you're kind of on the run and don't have measuring cups with you. Okay, so one of the last things we're going to talk about is exercise. So I know you guys are exercising weekly now with your group, I believe. So we're just going to talk a little bit about what the recommendations are, so you can do some on your own too. So for children ages and adolescents, ages 6 to 17, it's going to be 60 minutes a day. And you know, that doesn't mean you have to go for an hour run. It means you can do like 15 minutes of walking in the morning, 15 in the middle of the day, or 15 minutes after school. Or walk pretty quickly to your classes, you know, in between if you have 5 minutes. That counts too. Everything counts at all. It doesn't have to be one big lump sum of exercise. You can add it out throughout the day. You know, on the weekends, you can go for walks with your friends, go on bike rides with your friends, things like that, okay? It's good to get muscle strengthening and bone strengthening too. So those are all good things. You know, you guys are still growing. You want to keep your bones pretty healthy. Okay, so it's good to start. And then for adults, we have, so it can be either 2 hours and 30 minutes of moderate intensity exercise along with the strength training, or we can have an hour and 15 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise, again with the strength training, or you can have a combination of the two, okay? So again, you know, it doesn't have to be all at one time. Break it up throughout the week. That's perfectly fine. Whatever. I'm sure you guys are pretty busy. You know, you all have work, homework, things like that. So however you can fit it into your day, it all counts, okay? And so these are just examples of the differences. So moderate intensity is going to be like, you know, walking, if you're gardening outside, going for like a casual bike ride. That's all going to be included in the moderate category. Whereas the vigorous is going to be like running, jumping rope, swimming laps. Those are all pretty good. You know, it gets your heart rate up pretty good, okay? And so the very last thing we're going to talk about is, you know, why should I care about what I'm eating? You know, we just talked about a whole lot of things, so why should we care? So, you know, consuming all these different foods that we talked about, all those different healthy foods, it can help keep your body strong. Not to say you'll never get sick again, but, you know, it can help your body fight off these illnesses or kind of reduce how long the illnesses stay with you. You know, it just gives your body the strength to fight off all these different things. It can prevent diseases. So there's a couple diseases that are a lot more prevalent nowadays, like diabetes, cardiovascular disease. A lot of these are seen a lot more often now. So being able to prevent these things from happening is a really good thing, and you can start by changing your diets. And basically the last two, you just feel better. I don't know if you've ever, you know, after Thanksgiving when you eat that heavy meal, no one feels like going for a walk or a run. You want to lay down. So it's kind of throughout the day, you know, if you're having these heavy things every day, you're going to feel a little bit more sluggish, where if you're eating, you know, the things that we've talked about, it's going to make you feel a little bit better, not only physically, but a little bit more mentally too. Okay, you know, when you're doing these things, when you're making these changes, you feel better, and so you want to keep doing them. So you just have to kind of get started, and then it'll kind of be addicting almost in a way, okay? So I think that's all I have, but I want you guys, I have plenty of time for questions, so yeah.
Okay, so you said I like apple juice.
Okay,
You said eating an apple over apple juice is better.
yes.
that apple juice and have an apple.
Okay.
Is it gonna double?
Well, ideally,
Bring down more weight, or is it gonna add it? 'cause I
okay.
got apple juice?
Yeah, so the juice is actually similar to pops. They're gonna have a lot of calories in them because sugar is gonna have a pretty good amount of calories, okay? Whereas the apple, it's gonna have probably less calories and you're also gonna get the fiber, which helps fill you up. So it's not really empty calories. It's gonna help kind of keep you full and do its job. So ideally, just the apple would be the better choice, okay?
I've been thinking about everything that she's saying. I'm thinking about the school lunches. I love the school lunches here. And I mostly eat on your side. Like, the teachers have their portions.
Okay.
And then they'll have like barbecue chicken on their
Mm-hmm.
side. Like cool stuff.
Yeah.
So you go into that, whatever it is, the section of the lunchroom, I don't know what it's called, but they have a different meal every day. Origins, yes.
Okay.
Sometimes they have baked chicken and baked fish, meatloaf. Like
They're
they
good
have
options,
better than
yeah.
Cheeseburger and fries and that fly pizza. I know, but if you change up and go to the origin section, you're at least making a little
Yeah.
bit of a better choice than the fries and the cheeseburgers. If you want to apply it here at your lunch.
I just like the wrap. I'm just doing the wrap.
Oh, the wrap fries.
Okay.
That's the only line I go to.
Yeah.
So like,
It takes a long time.
H&M
That's another student complaint too. Is
It takes forever, but it's like worth the wait because it's like
Yeah.
sugar at Subway. But like, my question is,
Sure.
H&M don't have labels on their stuff.
Okay, so yeah.
like, I know mixing all the, because most people like flavor. So rather than
Mhm.
you regular food that sweet taste that you want,
Sure.
you get a honey Dijon because you want that little sour
Mhm.
sweet taste. You try to mix all this stuff together.
Okay.
But I know mixing all those sauces is adding more weight.
Yeah.
But like, so what do you? I tried to do raspberry vinaigrette, but naked on turkey isn't good. But I try like to
Okay.
stay away from whites, like mayo and
Okay,
ranch.
that's
I
a
don't
good thing, yeah.
eat,
Like the heavier ones.
Like, it's going to the thighs.
Okay, so the vinaigrettes are definitely going to be a better choice. Okay.
Guacamole good?
Yeah, so avocados are included in those healthy fats that we talked about. So, yeah.
just a pinch of salt.
You can add some lemon juice, a little bit of garlic powder. It's very good. Yes.
So what?
Avocados?
You know, and those chicken breasts in there season pretty good.
There you go. You have a question?
Works out
Some of the
yesterday.
red line are slow. They have like oven baked chips and sun chips.
Okay.
Which one is better?
That's a good question, yeah. So those are actually probably fairly similar. The good thing about the sun chips is they're made with a whole grain, I believe. So that's going to give you a little bit of fiber. The baked chips will just be lower in fat than the regular chips. So both of them are actually better options. You might see a little bit of a calorie difference. I think the sun chips are going to be a little bit higher. Okay, so that's definitely higher than the baked chips. But, you know,
320 of salty.
That's one serving or two.
okay, yeah, let's look at the bag.
It's supposed to be whole wheat and delicious.
It's hard, yeah. You can't win at all.
You just can't win.
You can't win. And you guys don't have to, you know, make all these changes right away. Just trying to make a better change, you know, every week try to maybe add something new or change something. Okay?
Look at the ingredients.
Yeah.
They come with whole corn, sunflower, and canola oil, and
Okay.
not olive oil. Is that fat juice?
Canola oil is it's still not a terrible choice. So what you want to look for?
And brown rice flour.
Okay, so that's actually not too bad. One thing you do want to look for, if you ever see something called hydrogenated oil, do you remember we talked about those trans fats? So that's considered a trans fat. So when you see that in the label, you probably want to pick something else. Okay?
It says yeast extract. Does that mean it's going to my thighs?
Not necessarily. Okay.
Stay away from the bread and butter.
Another question, yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned before how dieting is kind of, and how people are like busy eaters. Like
Yeah.
they're bored.
Mhm.
I'm definitely one
Okay.
of those, and I think that's my biggest problem.
Mhm.
So I've kind of like taken the steps to like do better snacks, but I feel like I'm snacking more than I should. Is like chewing gum okay to fill time? Because I
Yeah, or a lot of times too what happens is we actually think that we're hungry but we might be thirsty, so that's why it's good to make sure that you're drinking enough water too. So sometimes if you think that you're hungry but maybe you think that you shouldn't be because you had just eaten, try to drink a bottle of water and then see how you feel, or a glass of water and see how you feel.
chewing gum is okay.
Yeah, you know, there's nothing wrong with that to keep you busy. If you can, you know, not always in school, but when you're at home, like on the weekends, if you're kind of getting hungry or bored, you know, go for a walk or try to find an activity to kind of keep your mind off of it. Okay. Do your homework, yeah. Yeah.
It's like, okay, so my mom, she juices, and like, because we don't buy juice in our
Okay.
So like, instead, like now she juices like apples, because I like apple juice too.
Okay.
So is that like okay?
So it's gonna depend. Is it like a blender where it's the whole fruit, like you're taking out the seeds and then just blending up the fruit, or is it just kind of getting the juice from it? Okay, so with that, it's going to be similar to the juice because you're not getting any of the other part of the apple. The skin on the apple is going to be one of the best parts, and so you're not really having that. So if you could, I know smoothies are kind of a big thing right now, so if you can blend it all together, you know, core it, take out the seeds, and then blend it, that would be a better choice. Okay? Yeah.
Okay, so if I eat the fruit plain, is it healthier than me blending up the fruit to make a smoothie?
It depends what you're putting in the smoothie. You know, you're going to get the same nutrients if you blend it or eat it, but the problem with smoothies sometimes is that people add a lot of fruit to it, and you would never sit down and eat like a whole apple, a whole banana, a whole orange, and that's what's all in your smoothie, so that's going to add up calories pretty quickly.
I add like half, and then I do like B12 juice.
Okay.
You powder, and you add it with the juice, and then you pour it in the blender, and
Okay.
then you mix it instead of like using my old thing was apple juice.
Okay.
Since you said I can have it.
Just maybe cutting back a little bit.
Using this.
Okay, I've actually never have seen that before.
They just started selling it.
Let's see.
Cause like I think it's made of vitamins.
Like they said, it's
also
better
good
than
for
Crystal
bone
Light.
Okay.
and all that.
It's just like a, is it like a powder? Or
Yeah, it's a
okay.
powder. You put it in the water.
B12 energy. So it's like an energy drink.
It's
Sort of? Okay.
Kind of sort, but not like Crystal Light. Kind of like
Okay.
energy drink. It's like okay.
Okay.
Artificial sugar in it?
No, it's not like it's kind of like Crystal Light, but Crystal Light has that.
And I don't like that sugar.
Yeah.
That's the healthier version. They got it at Sam's Club.
Let's see.
It's like a big box.
Like, this is perfect for
Just be careful of that caffeine because it seems like there's kind of some caffeine in there too. So just,
Caffeine's bad for you.
no, not necessarily, but you know, if you get like antsy or jittery from caffeine, kind of just pay attention to that. Okay. Yeah.
Is Splenda okay?
Splenda. So there's a lot of controversy with the artificial sweeteners. You know, some people think that they're good, some people think that they're bad. I think with anything, you shouldn't use a ton of it. So if you're using 1 or 2 a day, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. But you know, if you can kind of maybe get away from those a little bit, Splenda would be a better choice than like the Equal or things like that.
Cause I hate it, but I'd rather just not eat sugar. Cause I hate
What do you use it in?
like. See, I don't use it, but
Okay.
like I'd rather just not eat sugar at all.
Okay, that's an okay. Yeah.
Because like my mom, she'll be like, well, just put like Splenda. Like I'll eat strawberries, and she'll be like, just put Splenda on it.
Mhm.
Cause like I have a sweet tooth,
Mhm.
and so like I'm trying to like go away from the sugar.
Okay.
But like every once in a while, I get that like.
You kind of need something.
Yeah,
Sure.
So I'll eat fruit or something like that.
Mhm.
but then,
That's
like,
perfect.
I want something sweeter.
Sure.
She'll be like, put Splenda on it, but I don't even know if that's like.
It's not terrible, but it is, you know, it's an artificial sweetener, so it's sort of like a chemical in a way. Okay. One thing I actually like to do is if you take like the small cups of yogurt and put it in the freezer for a little bit and freeze it so it just gets a little more frozen, you can kind of trick yourself into thinking it's ice cream.
What about honey?
So honey, it's going to be a sugar. So remember we talked about the difference between the natural and the added sugar. That's going to be more of a natural sugar, but it's still going to have calories, so it's still not something that you can freely use.
So use like a little.
Yeah, that'd be okay, a little bit. So it's still going to add up the calories, though. So still, like I said, don't use it freely, but okay.
Can you talk really quickly
Yeah.
about today when we weighed in? Today we measured body fat.
Okay.
Okay, and a lot of people might be looking at that number today, saying, "What is it? What should it be at?" and everything else. Can you
Okay.
talk a little bit about body fat?
Yeah, so sometimes what happens if you're trying to like exercise more, you're lifting weights maybe a little bit more often, you might actually start to build muscle. So you'll be reducing your body fat, but your weight might not change so much, which is can be discouraging, but that doesn't mean that you're doing a bad job, okay? It means that you're just gaining a little bit of muscle. And so being able to kind of look at that number, to be honest, I'm not sure the recommendation for the number. I want to say it's around 18 or 19%, but I'm not positive on that. I have to double check. Okay, but you know, you guys are exercising, so you might have weeks where you gain a little bit more muscle, maybe not lose any weight, but that doesn't mean that you're, like I said, you're not working hard, you're not doing a good job. Just the numbers will be a little bit off, maybe. Okay. Do we have any other questions? Yeah. Fruits? Well, so all are going to be pretty good. Some will be a little bit higher in fiber than others. So like apples are pretty good because they have the skin on it, so those will be a good choice. Berries are a really good fruit. There's not gonna be a bad fruit, I guess, is my answer. But it's all about your portion still. So fruit is a carbohydrate. It's gonna have sugar in it. So it's a good thing to kind of, not limit so much, but kind of be aware of how much we're having. Like those smoothies that we talked about, you don't want to be adding, 3 or 4 different fruits in one smoothie because that's going to add up your calories still. Okay, it's still a better option than, other things, but just kind of being aware. Okay.
I'm sure you probably talked about this,
Mhm.
but I have a couple of these guys in my class, and they were eating a bag of Doritos.
Okay, we actually compare that up there. Yep.
Doritos or Cheetos, whatever
Okay.
it may have been, and I'm like, should you be eating that? And they're like, it's only 120 calories.
Sure, yeah. Like we kind of talked about. Calories,
You did,
a little
okay.
bit, yeah, but we can talk a little bit more about that. So, like he was saying, calories aren't everything. I'm a firm believer that you don't necessarily have to count calories. It's more about the foods that you're eating. And so, personally, I think counting calories is hard. You have to sit there and count everything that you're eating all day long. No one really has much time for that. But if you're focusing more on the types of food that you're eating and your portion sizes, that's going to be really helpful. Like like he was saying, 100 calories of chips versus 100 calories of nuts. There's going to be a better option. The nuts are going to give you not just calories, but also a lot more benefit too. Okay. Yeah.
I don't want to make the TMI question.
That's okay.
But so cover your feet. So, what would you recommend? Because most teenagers, I'm a worker. I
Okay.
go to work.
Okay.
And I go to school. So
Mhm.
I think one of you guys in here said that you don't always have time to do fitness.
Sure.
So with that, we also do miss meals, and I think my mom was St. James, and she if
Oh,
you
really?
eat your
Okay.
3 meals a day, that messes up with your body.
Mhm.
Getting rid of waste,
Okay.
out of there.
You can- sure.
What would you just recommend? Just eating wheats more,
Not
to increase the
necessarily.
fiber to get it out of there.
So one thing to do is just, if you can, try to plan ahead. So if you know that you're going to have a busy day, maybe try to pack a couple of snacks so you don't have to miss anything. Having a small snack is better than skipping a whole meal. Okay, so if you know you're having a busy day, maybe take a little bit of time, like the day before, the weekend before, whenever you have time to plan that out and pack stuff so you have it with you. So that can prevent you, like I said, from skipping meals. That can also prevent you from making bad choices if you're on the run and you don't have a choice really of what you're eating. You have to grab something quick. You'll be prepared. You'll be planned. Okay. Drinking water can help with that too, so making sure you're staying hydrated. Okay, and then fiber is going to help with that too. So all the fruits and vegetables will have fiber. Basically, a lot of the things that we talked about have fiber. So when you're changing your eating habits to healthier eating habits, you're automatically going to get more fiber. It's okay. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah.
A little bit? Okay.
I don't know, you're supposed to just eat wheats, and they say speed up your metabolism to get it all,
So just eating regularly throughout the day is going to help speed up your metabolism. Yeah.
making you sick.
Sure. Yes, you definitely want to stay regular. So the fiber, like we talked about, is going to help with that. Okay. And eating consistently if you can. So planning. Okay. Yeah.
What are your opinions about cheat days?
Cheat days? Okay. I know. Cheat weekends. We all have those. This last weekend was a cheat weekend for me, bad. Okay, so it happens to everyone. But what's important to remember is just because you mess up once doesn't mean that you're a failure and that you are kind of out of the game. It happens. One thing that's helpful is if you ever are really craving something, you just say I need to have this cookie. Sometimes when you deprive yourself too much, then when you actually do let yourself have it, you might end up eating more. So sometimes if you just think that you need a little cookie or something, just have it. It's not the end of the world if you have a small cookie or something. Okay, so you don't want to ever go overboard, I guess.
It's easier, now, sometimes, I'll think that I want a Coke, and I'll buy a Coke, and after a sip of it, my teeth hurt, it's so sweet.
Your
So
taste
it
definitely
does get
adjusts,
easier,
yeah.
absolutely.
And to kind of go along with that, like you said, your tastes do adjust. And I don't want you guys to think of this as a super strict diet. It's supposed to last a lifetime, essentially. And so if you just focus on making small changes each week, maybe at the beginning of the week, if you can meet with your teams and just say, okay, this week we're going to work on doing this right. And then a couple weeks later, kind of pick something else to work on. So these will be things that will last longer than just the length of this show. Okay, it's going to last, like I said, for a while. It's going to be healthy habits rather than just a diet. Okay? Yeah.
Do you lose more nutrients
Some like the water soluble vegetables you will because you'll lose it in the water. Steaming's probably gonna be a little bit better, or like sautéing's a good option. Roasting them is okay too. Okay. Yep. Do you have a question too?
What about frozen versus fresh?
Essentially, they're about the same. Only if it's not the frozen ones with like the extra gravies or cheeses on them. They're about the same. But definitely better than the can, because the can, like we said, are going to have that extra salt in it, or sodium. Okay. Yeah.
I have a question about like diet with exercise.
Okay.
Like let's say if you're about to exercise,
Mhm.
it's better if you had either your protein or whatever before you exercise
Mhm.
or after your exercise, or what do you recommend? Or
Okay, usually after is going to be a better choice to kind of make sure that to kind of give your body what you lost. So you're breaking down your muscle. You want to make sure that you're being able to rebuild it. So you have to give your body that fuel. But on the other hand, it's okay to have something before too to kind of give you the energy to exercise. So a combination of things before is a good thing to kind of have, like maybe a little bit of carbs, a little bit of protein, a little bit of everything. And then after, same thing. A good variety of foods is always a good thing to have.
and then another thing,
Mhm.
what do you like working out like either in the morning or in the afternoon? Do you have a suggestion?
I think whatever works best for your schedule.
Or what about without schedule? Like
Okay.
I try to wake up 3 a.m.
That sounds like not a lot of fun.
What would be better for your body? Like if after you came out of your, going to sleep,
Mhm.
would it be better for your body to be active right in the morning, or is it like, should my body be active for a little bit before I actually start
Sure.
going to workout?
I think it's kind of going to be a personal preference. Some people like the workout in the morning because they think it gets them going, which is a great thing. But some people can't get up that early and give it in a good workout. You're half asleep sometimes, and that doesn't wake them up maybe. So I think it's kind of a personal thing. Whatever works best for you and what you think works best for your body. Okay.